Hello, welcome to my channel. Thank you for visiting. This is Heaven Sent to Row. So, I don't intend for this particular reading to be very long. It just happens that I was sitting here watching a YouTube video, and this YouTube video is mentioning the exact thing that I discussed in my last reading. So if you haven't seen that reading, I highly suggest that you go and watch that reading. It'll be the most recent reading on the channel. I don't know if I can remember. It's something like their lives of comfort in their sick delusions are coming to an end or something like that. So I would like you to go take a look at that video before watching this, because then you will understand exactly what it is that I am talking about in this reading. So as I was saying, I am watching this YouTube video and I had to pause it because I have here on the screen almost word for word exactly what I said in that previous reading. And so I'm going to show what I have here on my screen before I come back and do this reading. So hold on a moment. Okay, now it says here, comfort keeps white people silent about racism and oppression. Okay, I'm not going to play the video. I'm just going to show that there. So, having seen this appear on my screen as I'm not even really thinking about that particular reading, really, I have been thinking about really what upcoming energies I might like to tap into. And I'll say here that I may have mentioned it in the previous reading, I don't know, but I don't really typically have much of an idea of what I'm going to talk about each reading. Sometimes I do. That is not often the case, really. I tend to like to sit down and clear the space and allow the energy to direct me, the ancestors, the mother and father, and all the various relative spirits in the realm. Let me know through signs and messages in my local reality, in my life. And so, as I said, I'm sitting here watching this video, and the title didn't even indicate that that would show up in the video. It was talking about racism, yes, but it wasn't that specific subject. So I was looking at this, not necessarily in surprise, because I know how these things work, but it certainly gave me pause, and the ancestors directed me to stop and do a little reading on this specific topic here. So I will first just briefly reiterate what was said in that reading. As I said, the title was something like "Their lives of comfort in this sick delusion are coming to an end," right? So even the word comfort is in the title of that video. So I talked a bit about how the system of white supremacy and racism necessitates that we keep white people comfortable, right? And this manifests in various ways, and I'm not going to go through that right now. It's just to make the point that that's what was some of what I discussed in that reading. And so here I am looking at this video in which it says, comfort keeps white people silent about racism and oppression. And so I sat and thought about it for a moment and was thinking, what would I have to say about that? Because in a certain sense, these discussions that are had in the general society amongst black people, but especially amongst white people particularly, it seems very ridiculous and immature to have to even have the discussion in the first place, right? But then I was looking at some of the other videos in this compilation, and I'm just listening to the ways in which people are talking about the various subjects. And it occurred to me that instead of talking about the topic itself, I thought to myself, it seems to me that I really need to address just the absolute ridiculousness of the entire situation. I mean, what are these grown adult individuals actually talking about? What are we talking about here, really? Comfort keeps white people silent about racism and oppression. Now, let's just think about that for a moment. And I want to reiterate that I said the title of that final video, or that most recent video, in that title, it says something about delusion, right? So this is the energy that's coming up for me. All of this discussing what racism is, how it functions, so forth and so on. At the end of the day, the entire thing is, as I've said, a mental illness, a spiritual illness, a psychological dysfunction, okay? And so to try to make the point that comfort keeps white people silent about racism and oppression is literally insane, because comfort is not what keeps white people silent at all. And I say that because while it is true that in a certain context various white people have comfortable lives, it is also true that the reality of this world is, in general, just actually not comfortable for anybody. How on earth is anybody capable of being comfortable when you know that there is a such thing as assault, abuse, child abuse, war, environmental pollution? The list could go on, right? So we don't need to do that. But if you are ultimately aware that the reality that you live in is dangerous on various levels, then exactly where are you comfortable? How can you be comfortable with anything? Slavery and white racism aside, there is no actual comfort in this reality. And then to bring up racism and slavery, there is no actual comfort in racism or slavery. It's mentioned in this video that one major feature of slavery and white ownership of slaves is that white owners are very often fearful of their slaves, revolting, hurting them, stealing from them, whatever the case may be. But the general concept being that these people are often afraid that their black slaves will rise up against them and do a great deal of harm to them. So there's no comfort in that either. And so with that energy in mind, I think I'm actually only going to pull one or two cards for this energy, just because the spirits guided me to acknowledge this information. So I'm going to pull right off the top of my deck, and let's see what we have. But now that's interesting. I'll do one more, only one. All right, so we have here happiness and trust in the invisible. Now, I'll say this before I even get into reading this. I have shuffled this deck every time I do a reading. And I have been pulling the same cards in almost every single reading. The irony here is not lost on me. So, this energy keeps coming up in various forms. So we have, again, happiness, trust in the invisible. Now, what is this telling me in the context of the comfort, keeping white people silent about racism and oppression? What I'm hearing here is that this happiness, these people that believe they have been happy in these circumstances, you see this darkness surrounding this snail here? What it's telling me is that happiness has all been emptiness, nothing, absolutely nothing. These people are not happy. You cannot be happy and comfortable while at the same time beating, mutilating, harming people on a regular basis. How exactly can you be happy while maintaining others in an enslaved condition? What exactly is it that you are happy about if you perceive a people who are not doing anything to you to be not only your enemy, but to be deserving of having their entire world destroyed while you continue to live in it? And so this trust in the invisible is not exactly what it appears. Don't take that trust in the invisible at face value. The point there is actually the darkness. The happiness is a lie. They trusted in something false, not real. There is no such thing as happiness in this reality. No matter what side you're on, whether you are the enslaver or the enslaved, there is no such thing. And so, I think that's really all I have to say about it. That sounds like about right. That sounds like that's all that really needs to be said. I'll just make the point one more time and I'll leave it there. There is no such thing as happiness in a world in which your comfort requires enslaving other people. And not only enslaving others, but destroying the world around you. That's worse than a lie. It's what I said before. It is a delusion. That blackness is the delusion of these people's spirit. You see how light the happiness card is? When you're happy, that is what your soul is. Nice and light. But that is not what is going on. They're not happy. They're empty. They're filled with darkness. Filled with this void that cannot be satisfied. It cannot be satiated. And so, keep that in mind as we continue to see various changes in this reality pertaining to the illusion and the delusion that is white supremacy and racism, and ultimately the entire Western civilization. And so I will have another reading coming up this week, maybe one or two more, but I had to take the time to pause and do this reading. It really literally came out of nowhere. I wasn't even planning on doing a reading today. And so that is how wonderful the spirit realm is. Trust in the invisible in that sense, right? That's a beautiful, positive way to end this. Trust in the invisible. Trust that the spirits are guiding you through this momentous time that we're in. That's all. That's all I have to say. I hope you have a very beautiful, very peaceful, very gentle rest of your day. Bye.